Detroit is a city known for its engineering ingenuity, mass production, and endless expanses of factories. One such factory and its accompanying corporation, Marathon Petroleum, has caused significant annoyances and provoked outrage amongst the citizens of Detroit since its inception. Marathon's Detroit refinery sits on 250 acres in southwest Detroit, but the looming complex, its fiery smokestacks, and its peculiar stench is known to anyone who drives on I-75 south of Detroit. First built in 1930 by the Aurora Gasoline Company and then purchased by Marathon Petroleum from Max Fisher in 1959, the refinery has the distinction of being the only one of its kind in Michigan, and its strategic placement allows for the import of heavy crude oil from Canada, making it an important economic driver of the region, on top of employing 525 people. However important the refinery may be, this has not prevented the public from rallying against the plant for many different reasons. In the past few years, citizens have protested and brought lawsuits against Marathon over pollution from the plant. Local retailers sued Marathon for killing their businesses and creating environmental hazards. Activists were outraged and staged protests over the accumulation of petcoke, which is a crude oil byproduct, being stockpiled along the Detroit River. And citizens and politicians alike aired grievances and demanded answers after a fire and explosion at the plant forced thousands of residents to be evacuated from their homes. Though all of these grievances happened within the past 5 years, the tenuous relationship between Marathon and residents of Southwest Detroit has a long history. Even a home buyout program, seen as essential by many residents to getting any value for their home, provoked controversy over who was selected for buyouts and how much money was offered for homes. The current dilemma facing Marathon Petroleum, and the subject of this policy analysis, is the issue of increasing the amount of sulfur dioxide levels that are allowed to be emitted from the plant. Marathon was granted a permit to increase SO2, sulfur dioxide, emissions from 16.5 tons to 22 tons under the new permit. The company sought this permit to ensure that they would be able to install new technologies that produce cleaner gasoline, which meets EPA standards that are set to take effect in the next few years, essentially raising SO2 input to lower SO2 levels in the atmosphere later on by producing cleaner gasoline. The problem with this, of course, is that Marathon Petroleum is located in the most polluted zip code in Michigan, 48217. This area has above average amounts of asthma and cancer patients living in the area, and the EPA considers Southwest Detroit in non-attainment, or exceeding federal guidelines for the amount of pollution and in specific SO2 in the air. Therefore, citizens see any increase in the amount of pollution allowed as a non-starter, despite the fact that emissions from the Marathon plant only contribute to 3% of the air pollution in the area. Regardless, many influential players, including Mayor Duggan, have taken steps to prevent Marathon from increasing its emissions, including a $5 million lawsuit. Given that Marathon is now stuck in a position between meeting EPA standards and the demands of the community, I will evaluate some of their policy options. First is the status quo. Do nothing. Don't change emission levels. Don't install new technologies. Second, implement the proposed emissions increase. 3. Lower emissions. Now, it might seem strange that this is on here when increase emissions is on here as well. But just within the past week, Marathon announced that it is reworking its permit request to the state that would produce 20% lower levels of SO2 and cost approximately $10 million. And finally, continue with the home buyout program that was implemented in 2011 and 2012. This means buying out several hundred homes for at least $50,000 each. In order to determine which criteria should be used to evaluate these policies, I view Marathon's corporate values listed on their website. Here, they say that they value environmental stewardship and that they are committed to minimizing their environmental impact and continually look for ways to reduce their footprint, and that they also value corporate citizenship, that they work to make a positive difference in the communities where they have the privilege to operate. Keeping this in mind, I have developed 4 criteria on which to evaluate the proposed policies. Cost, which was given a weight of 0.35, environmental impact, which was also given a weight of 0.35, ease of implementation, which was given a weight of 0.20, and public image, which is given a weight of 0.10. In the scorecard, a score of 4, means it has the highest impact, which in this case is considered a negative thing, and a score of 1 means it has the lowest impact. Therefore, the lowest scores are best in this scenario. Maintaining the status quo would have no additional costs, at least not until the EPA begins fining Marathon for not meeting certain standards. The environmental impact of not doing anything is quite high. The ease of implementation would be easiest because nothing has to be done, and the public image would remain the same. Increasing emissions would cost the $10 million for the new technologies that need to be installed, plus a potential $5 million lawsuit from the city of Detroit. Environmental impact would be high, considering the increase in SO2, but then it would eventually be lower, given that cleaner gasoline is the eventual result of the increase in SO2 emissions from the plant. Ease of implementation, including political feasibility, would be quite hard in this situation, as currently in the media there's been a lot of public backlash, and subsequently public image would decrease. Lowering the emissions would cost approximately $10 million, and as of right now, Marathon is not projecting that they would have any cuts to their production, even if they have to lower emissions. Environmental impact would be low, considering that they will be producing cleaner oil as well as less emissions. Ease of implementation would be quite easy, considering that most of the residents of Southwest Detroit are behind lower emissions. And public image would actually increase in this scenario. And finally, a continuation of the home buyout program would cost at least $13.3 million, given that each house must be offered at least $50,000. And in the last buyout program, 266 homes were purchased by Marathon. So at least $3.3 million would have to be spent again, if not more, purchasing houses. The environmental impact would be high then lower because the environmental impact of demolishing homes is high, but Marathon plans to turn the area where these homes formerly stood into an expansive green space, which would essentially help to purify some of the air in the area. Ease of implementation would be the hardest of these options because getting people out of their homes is difficult. And then public image would improve slightly because a lot of people around the plant have a hard time trying to sell their house if they want to leave, so they see Marathon offering to buy their house as a necessity. Given that the status quo is not feasible because of new EPA standards, and increasing emissions is truly no longer feasible either, given that Marathon has admitted that they can do essentially everything that they planned on doing by lowering emissions as well, clearly lowering emissions is the best option for Marathon Petroleum, and that is the option that I would recommend.